Here's something nobody wants to say out loud. Most couples don't stop being physically intimate because they stopped being attracted to each other. They stop because of something that happens long before anyone gets into bed. Something invisible. Something that builds so slowly, over months, sometimes years, that neither person even notices it happening until one day they realize it's been 3 weeks, then 6, then they stop counting. And here's the part that will really get you. When researchers ask couples why they stopped, the answers they give are almost never the real answers. They say, "We've been busy, we're stressed, the kids, work, we're just tired." And those things are true, but they're not the reason. The reason sits underneath all of that. In the psychology of how two people relate to each other outside the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the car, in the small daily moments that most couples pay no attention to at all. Because here's what the science actually shows. Sex in long-term relationships doesn't die in the bedroom. It dies in the living room, at the dinner table, in a conversation that went slightly wrong and was never fully repaired. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will understand your relationship in a way most therapists take years to explain. A couple, together 7 years, 2 kids, a house they picked out together, lying in the same bed, 6 inches apart, both awake. Both know the other is awake. Neither reaches across. Not because they don't want connection, not because they've stopped caring, but because somewhere in the last few years, that 6 inches became a distance neither of them knows how to cross anymore. And here's the part that breaks my heart about this. Both of them think it's their fault. She thinks, maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe he's not interested in me. He thinks, maybe I should try. But what if she says no again? What if I can't handle that? And so they lie there, 6 inches apart, in the same silence they've been lying in for months. This is not a rare story. This is the story of tens of millions of couples right now, tonight, in bedrooms across this country. And the reason it's happening, the actual psychological, neurological reason, is almost nothing like what either of them thinks it is. Let's talk about it. I want to start with the question. When did you last feel genuinely, completely close to your partner? Not just physically, but close. The way you felt in the beginning, when just being in the same room with them felt like enough. For most people watching this, that question lands somewhere. Maybe with a small ache. Maybe with a specific memory. Maybe with the uncomfortable recognition that you can't quite answer it. And here's what I want you to notice about that feeling. It is not primarily about sex, but it is entirely connected to it. Because what most couples lose, long before they lose physical intimacy, is something researchers call felt closeness. The subjective, embodied sense that you and this person are genuinely, safely on the same team. When that goes, and it can go so slowly you barely feel it leaving, everything else follows. Not because anyone stops loving anyone, but because the body doesn't separate emotional safety from physical desire the way we think it does. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan, this is The Connection Theory, and today we're going to talk about the thing that almost nobody admits is the real reason couples stop being intimate. We're going to talk about the psychology, the neuroscience, and most importantly, what actually reverses it. Stay with me. Let's start by destroying a myth. If you asked most people why couples stop having sex in long-term relationships, they'd give you one of 3 answers. Boredom, attraction fading, or just life getting in the way. And relationship advice columns, self-help books, and every listicle ever written about this topic has been built on those 3 answers. Spice things up, try something new, schedule date nights, prioritize intimacy. All of that advice is treating a symptom. None of it is touching the actual disease. Here's what the research actually shows. A landmark study out of the University of Toronto, one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on long-term sexual intimacy, found that the single strongest predictor of a couple's sexual frequency was not physical attraction, not novelty, not even time together. It was the quality of their non-sexual emotional interactions. Read that again. The couples who maintained the most consistent physical intimacy were not the ones who were most physically attracted to each other, or the most adventurous in the bedroom. They were the ones who felt the most emotionally safe with each other outside the bedroom. And the couples who saw the steepest decline in physical intimacy over time, they all shared one common pattern. Not lack of attraction, accumulation of unresolved emotional disconnection. Small things, a comment that landed wrong and was never addressed. A moment of reaching for your partner and finding them not quite there. A vulnerability offered that wasn't fully received. Multiplied over months, over years, until the body, your nervous system, quietly added up all of those small disconnections and made a decision. This is not a safe place to be fully open. And when the body makes that decision about emotional safety, physical desire follows. Not immediately, not dramatically, just quietly, steadily, less. But here's the strange part. Almost nobody connects those two things. The small emotional moments and the physical distance that follows. They feel completely separate, which is exactly why the problem is so hard to fix. Think about the last time you felt genuinely, completely desired by your partner. Not just the physical part, but the full feeling of it. Being looked at like you matter. Being reached for with intention. Being wanted, not just as a body, but as the specific person you are. What did that feel like in your body? Warm, right? Open, safe. Like you could relax in a way you don't relax anywhere else. Now think about the last time you felt criticized by your partner, or dismissed, or like something you said just didn't land. Different feeling entirely. Tight, slightly braced, alert in a way that doesn't fully switch off even after the moment passes. Here's the neuroscience behind what you just did. Your nervous system, specifically the polyvagal system, which neuroscientist Stephen Porges spent decades mapping, does not treat emotional threat and physical threat as different categories. When you feel criticized, dismissed, unheard, your nervous system registers threat. Real threat. The same system that would respond to physical danger quietly activates. Heart rate slightly increases. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises slightly. The muscles around your chest and stomach carry just a little more tension. And here's the critical part. Sexual desire, genuine, embodied, spontaneous desire, is neurologically incompatible with a threat response. You cannot be simultaneously in a threat state and in a state of genuine openness and desire. The nervous system does not allow it. These are mutually exclusive physiological states. So every single time a small emotional wound goes unresolved between partners, the nervous system files it, keeps it, adds it to a running calculation of, is this a safe place to be fully open? And here's what makes this so insidious. Neither partner is usually aware this is happening. She's not thinking, I'm withholding desire because he dismissed my feeling 3 weeks ago. She's just thinking, I'm not really in the mood tonight. He's not thinking, I'm afraid to initiate because last time I reached for her, she seemed tired and I felt rejected. He's just thinking, I don't want to push. The consciousness doesn't know what the nervous system is tracking, but the nervous system is tracking everything. Almost nobody realizes this. The bedroom is just where the report card finally gets handed in. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, today I'm going to start creating emotional distance from my partner. It's never a decision, it's a drift. And the drift almost always starts the same way. One person is having a hard day, a hard week, a hard season. They carry it differently than their partner expects. They get quieter, or more irritable, or more focused on work, or more checked out in the evenings. And their partner, who loves them, who wants to help, makes the most natural, most human mistake possible. They take it personally. Not dramatically, just that small, quiet interior shift. Is something wrong between us? Am I doing something wrong? And from that moment, something changes in how they interact. Slightly more careful, slightly more guarded, slightly less willing to be spontaneous or warm because spontaneity feels vulnerable, and vulnerability feels risky when you're not sure where you stand. The first person notices the change, senses that their partner seems slightly more careful, and unconsciously mirrors it. And now you have two people who love each other, both slightly more guarded than they were 3 months ago, and neither of them has any idea it's happening. This is what researchers call the demand-withdraw pattern, and it is the single most documented relationship dynamic associated with long-term decline in both emotional and physical intimacy. One partner, sensing distance, reaches for connection. The other, feeling the pressure of that reach, withdraws slightly. The reaching partner reaches harder. The withdrawing partner withdraws further. Not because either person is wrong. Not because either person doesn't care. Because two nervous systems, both operating on the same basic algorithm of perceived threat equals less openness, are responding to each other in a loop that neither person designed and neither person knows how to exit. Think about your own relationship for a second. Which role do you tend to play? The one who reaches when they feel distance, or the one who needs space when they feel pressure? Because here's what's almost never talked about. Both of those positions are forms of the same thing. Both are a nervous system responding to the signal, I'm not completely safe here right now. One person responds to that signal by reaching harder. The other responds by pulling back. And in the middle of those two responses, in the space between the reaching and the pulling back, physical intimacy quietly, steadily fades. What if I told you that most of the conventional advice about rekindling intimacy in relationships is not just ineffective, but actually makes the underlying problem worse? Here is the first mistake almost every couple makes. They try to fix the symptom instead of the source. Planned date nights, new experiences, advice from the internet about how to spice things up. All of this treats physical intimacy as a problem that lives in the bedroom and can be fixed with bedroom solutions. But the nervous system doesn't care about new lingerie or a weekend away if the underlying calculation of emotional safety hasn't changed. You can take the most romantic trip of your life, beautiful location, nice hotel, no kids, no work, and lie in that hotel bed feeling the same 6 inches apart you feel at home. Because you brought your unresolved dynamic with you. The location changed, the nervous system didn't. Here is the second mistake, having the conversation directly. We need to talk about our sex life. 6 words. And I promise you, in most relationships, those 6 words produce exactly the opposite of what the person saying them wants. Because for the partner who has been withdrawing, those 6 words register as, you are failing me. This is a performance review. You need to do better. And what does a nervous system do when it registers that signal? Withdraws further, gets more defended, makes itself less available. The conversation that was supposed to open the door just added another lock. Here is the third mistake, and this one is subtle, waiting for desire to return before acting like it has. Most people think desire is supposed to come first. You feel desire and then you act on it. But here's what the research on long-term relationships actually shows. In the early stages of a relationship, spontaneous desire, the kind that just appears, unbidden, from nowhere, is genuinely common. Both partners feel it independently. It drives the physical relationship. But in long-term relationships, spontaneous desire for most people, and particularly for many women, though not exclusively, becomes what researchers call responsive desire. Desire that doesn't arrive first. Desire that responds to the right conditions. Which means it doesn't come before intimacy. It comes during intimacy, when the emotional and physical conditions are right. If you are waiting to feel desire before you engage with your partner, you may be waiting for something that, physiologically, is waiting for you to go first. This is not a moral statement. It is not about obligation. It is about understanding how desire actually works in a long-term nervous system, and how the absence of spontaneous desire in year 7 is not evidence that something is broken. It is evidence that the type of desire you're experiencing has changed, and the approach needs to change with it. Here's something worth sitting with. The average American couple spends less than 35 minutes per day in genuine, undivided, phone-free conversation with each other. 35 minutes. And of that 35 minutes, researchers who study relationship quality found that the majority is spent on logistics. Who picks up the kids? What needs to happen this week? Did you call the plumber? The average amount of time couples spend in conversation that has genuine emotional content, vulnerability, curiosity about each other, real disclosure, is measured in single-digit minutes per day. Single digits. And here's what's happening physiologically when two people spend the majority of their time together in logistical, transactional interaction. The nervous system, which is constantly reading the emotional temperature of the relationship, gradually reclassifies the partner. Not consciously, not as a decision, but in the way a nervous system categorizes things. This is a safe person versus this is a functional person. A safe person is someone your nervous system associates with the ventral vagal state. Warmth, openness, the possibility of genuine connection. A functional person is someone your nervous system associates with the neutral management of daily life. You can love a functional person completely. You can be committed to them. You can be loyal, faithful, and kind. But your nervous system does not generate spontaneous desire toward people it is categorized as functional. It reserves that for people it associates with genuine emotional aliveness. And here is the modern life crisis hiding in plain sight. We have built lifestyles that are optimized for managing our functional lives and completely hostile to the conditions that maintain emotional aliveness between partners. In 1994, psychologist John Gottman, arguably the most rigorous relationship researcher who has ever lived, sat couples in his Seattle apartment lab and observed them for a weekend. He measured everything: heart rate, skin conductance, facial microexpressions, every verbal exchange, every bid for connection, and every response to those bids. And then he followed those couples for 6 years. And what he found has become one of the most replicated findings in relationship psychology. The couples who stayed emotionally and physically connected over those 6 years were not the ones who fought less, not the ones who had more in common, not the ones who were more physically compatible or more romantically expressive. They were the ones who turned toward each other in small moments, not grand moments, small ones. Your partner says, "Look at that bird." You look at the bird. Your partner says, "I'm tired." You say, "I know, today sounded hard." Your partner says nothing, but sits down beside you on the couch, and you shift slightly toward them instead of continuing to look at your phone. These tiny, unremarkable moments, Gottman called them bids for connection, are, he found, the actual infrastructure of long-term intimacy. Not the date nights, not the big conversations, not the grand romantic gestures. The turning toward, in small moments, consistently, over time. Because here's what happens in the nervous system when a partner turns toward you, even slightly, even briefly in a small moment. It registers as safe, present, here, not consciously, neurologically. And those tiny registrations, accumulated over days, over weeks, are what gradually reclassify a partner from functional back to safe. From someone you manage your life with, back to someone your nervous system associates with warmth and openness and the possibility of genuine connection. Think about your own relationship. How many bids for connection happen in a typical day between you and your partner? A comment that goes unacknowledged, a look that isn't quite met, a moment where one person reaches in the smallest possible way and the other person is somewhere else. Gottman found that couples who eventually divorced had turned toward each other's bids for connection 33% of the time. Couples who stayed together and stayed emotionally and physically connected had turned toward each other 87% of the time. 87% versus 33%. Not in grand gestures, in small moments. The bird, the "I'm tired," the sitting down beside someone and shifting slightly toward them. That is the real answer. Not more effort in the bedroom, more presence everywhere else. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable when they hear this. It is not hard. It does not require therapy or a retreat or a difficult conversation. It requires paying attention to the small bids in ordinary moments. That's it. That's the research. That's what keeps couples physically close over 20, 30, 40 years. Not the big romantic architecture. The small, consistent, almost invisible architecture of turning toward. Let me leave you with something real. If you're in a relationship right now where the physical intimacy has faded, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. Your relationship is not broken. Your partner is not broken. You are two people whose nervous systems gradually stopped feeling safe enough with each other to be fully open. And that happened, not because of something either of you did wrong, but because life is relentless and intimacy is fragile, and nobody taught either of you how to maintain it through the years that are genuinely hard. The good news, and I mean this, is that the nervous system that closed can open again. Not through a conversation about what's missing, not through grand gestures or weekend getaways, through the small things, the turning toward, the bird, the "I'm tired," the phone down, eyes up, body slightly angled toward the person you chose, consistently, without expectation, over time. That is what the research says. That is what I have seen over and over in the real stories of real couples. The 6 inches in that bed can close, but not with big moves, with small ones, starting tonight. If this episode names something you've been living with, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave me a comment. What's one small moment today where you could turn toward your partner instead of away? I read all of them. Subscribe if you want more of this. Real psychology, no fluff, no fake positivity. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan. This has been The Connection Theory. I'll see you in the next one.